on BBC Radio 5 Sports Extra.
Good evening, welcome to Mexico City. Formula One arrives at the Circuit Hermanos Rodriguez for the 20th round of the season. The sun is shining, a few white clouds in the air. There's actually a 10% chance of rain, but the grandstands are packed out, including the Foro Sol Stadium section in the final part of the lap, full to the brim to witness performances, like Taylor Swift. Well, today they get the fastest performances of 20 drivers in the field, because we are about to go qualifying ahead of the Mexico City Grand Prix. And to guide you through every step of the way is myself, Harry Benjamin. Alongside me is McLaren Formula E driver Sam Bird and the BBC's F1 correspondent Andrew Benson. Sam, talk me through this track. You're no stranger to it. It's got altitude, it's got long straight, or a very long 1.2 kilometre straight at the very least, to kickstart the lap.
Absolutely, Harry. High altitude means less drag. The cars are going to be doing speeds of up to and over 340 kilometers an hour approaching to turn one, making that braking zone and picking the braking zone very difficult. You've then got a chicane area through 2 and 3, taking a lot of curb. Then the tricky 4-5 complex, where we've seen a lot of drivers locking up and missing the braking point again through 4, which then compromises 5. We've seen quite a few twitches and nervous moments through 7, 8 and 9, in particular George Russell, Oliver Bearman and Alexander Albon getting it wrong through that section. And then the final sector, Harry, where it concertinas up in qualifying. We're going to see an awful lot of traffic and I think quite a few mistakes in the final sector.
I think we're going to be in store for quite an intriguing qualifying. 17 corners to contend with, 7 to the left, 10 to the right, reaching speeds of over 340 kilometres an hour. But what is the rough pecking order? Do we have an idea coming into this? Well, Andrew Benson, it's been a bit of a truncated practice session from Friday. What did we learn in FP3 earlier?
It's been a really hard weekend to read, Harry, hasn't it? Lots of tyre testing yesterday. Today, this morning, only an hour. Slightly jumbled order. Yuki Tsunoda third, for example, in the RB. But it looks like McLaren and Ferrari are the teams to beat. Ferrari were sort of quickest through most of final practice. Then Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri and the McLarens in the opposite order. Piastri actually went fastest, sort of took over at the top of the time sheets at the end. Ferrari dropped back, but which was a bit confusing. Red Bull and Mercedes, though, do look to be a bit off the pace of those two teams. So, obviously from a championship point of view, what ideally Formula One wants is Norris on pole and Verstappen somewhere behind him, a number of places. But Verstappen is Verstappen, and you get these race weekends where it looks like he's struggling and suddenly pulls it out and he's on the front row after all. So really unpredictable, I think, heading into qualifying.
Yeah, a reminder of the gap at the top of the Drivers' Championship. Max Verstappen extended his advantage last weekend out in Austin. 57 points now, the gap between himself and Lando Norris. But it's not been an easy weekend so far, has it, Sam, for Max Verstappen? Engine issues have plagued him. They've changed the engine, and it doesn't seem, and they're not going to take a penalty for it, but it doesn't seem to be quite the usual mojo of Verstappen that we're used to seeing.
No, he lacked mileage yesterday, didn't he, due to these engine issues. That seems to be sorted today, but he just doesn't seem to have the confidence with the car. He's been complaining of issues under braking, with stability from the rear of the car, lack of bite from the front also. Fundamentally, he feels like he's lacking grip.
What about his teammate, though, Sergio Perez? Big weekend for him in many respects. Not only does the pressure continue to pile on him and his performances, but also he's on home soil. He has to walk around with bodyguards. Everybody is screaming for Sergio Perez. Of course, was on the podium here twice a couple of years ago. Can he regain some form here with the power of the Mexican fans behind him?
Based on recent form and based on what we've seen in free practice, I'd have to say no. He was nowhere in FP3. I think his best position in practices so far has been a P9 and a P10. I think, if I'm being brutally honest, he might be on borrowed time right now at Red Bull. I think that the powers that be are looking quite closely at Liam Lawson, and unless Sergio Perez can have a really stellar end to the year, I think that these might be his last 5 races in the Red Bull seat.
Well, Perez is just sat in the cockpit of his Red Bull car waiting for the signal from his number one mechanic to be brought out into the fast lane, looking cool, calm and collected, just eyes darting on the screens in front of him as we get the green light at the end of the pit lane to signal we are ready to go qualifying for Q1. 20 cars out on the track, with the slowest 5 being eliminated come the end of the next now 17 minutes and 40 seconds. Sergio Perez, though, born just 340 miles away in Guadalajara, but 3 top 5 starts in the last 13 Grand Prix. The form is not quite with him at the moment. Let's see what he can do in qualifying this afternoon as the engines fire up and the cars pour out onto the track. But we mentioned Yuki Tsunoda a moment ago. RB have a bit of a history. Well, if we go back to last year when they were AlphaTauri, performing quite well. But that mid-pack, Sam, in general is tight at the moment. Naturally, we focus on the top teams, but the Hasses, the Williams, the Alpines, the RBs are all scrapping nip and tuck.
And it's so important, Harry, because there's a lot of money at stake for these kind of mid to lower pack teams in the Constructors' Championship. You know, that P6, let's call it P5, P6 battle is really, really important to them. We're obviously focusing on who can win the Constructors' title overall, but for these teams, that's the battle that they're in, and they will be desperate to pick up vital points here this weekend.
In terms of that Constructors' battle, well, at the top, McLaren have the advantage. 40 points the gap between themselves and Red Bull, who are very much now on the back foot, with Ferrari, courtesy of their 1-2 finish last time out in the USA, now just 8 points behind them, sitting in third. Mercedes are fourth, with Aston Martin in fifth, pretty much in no man's land. Then comes that ferocious battle. Haas currently leading the way in that sixth in the Constructors' Championship with 38 points to their name. RB are only 2 points behind. Then come Williams, who themselves are only 4 points ahead of Alpine. Sauber, the only team with their drivers Valtteri Bottas and Zhou Guanyu yet to score any points all season long. It's set to be one of Sauber's worst seasons in Formula One if it continues that way, as they begin to slowly morph into what will be the Audi Works team. But cars then stepping out onto the track, getting warmed up for this session with the tyres being put onto their cars, the soft rubber going on for Sergio Perez, and you can just hear the screams from the grandstands as he waves past, and as he waves at them, they wave back up on their feet. Perez Mania really does sweep Mexico City, but can he convert that into a front row start this afternoon? Well, the first thing we'll have to do is get through Q1. What do drivers do, though, Sam, on these out laps to get the car ready for the first flying runs?
Well, each team will have a specific tyre warm-up procedure, and each track has its own individual characteristics, so you might need to do something different in Mexico than you do at Monza. And also, track temperature and air temperature have a key element to play in this warm-up as well. So here I think that it works the tyre quite hard, but the surface is actually quite difficult to get any grip from. So I think they'll actually be generating quite a bit of energy into the tyre on the outlap, especially mid to end of the outlap.
As Perez sets sail on that first fast lap, he hasn't started on the front row of any Grand Prix since Belgium, where he was promoted up to the front row after his teammate had that engine penalty, of course. But he makes his way through turns 1 and 2, clatters over the inside curves, out through 3. Then you get the second dose of DRS. The rear wing opens to give you a little bit of an advantage down the straights, about 7/10 of a second gain into the braking zone for the left-hander of 4, almost a 90-degree left-hander. Then you come right back at yourself through a series of 3 right-handers before then you're suddenly in that middle sector, the fast sweeping S corners, which really have been catching out a few drivers so far this weekend.
Yeah, he looks like he's really struggling for grip out there, Sergio Perez. The car doesn't look very good on curb impact, and the front, where he's asking for front end, it's not there, and then the rear is just escaping from underneath him as well on traction.
Knocked out in Q1 4 times this year. He will not want to make that a 5th time on his home track. Lando Norris is out there on the soft tyre, going quickly as well. Fastest of anybody in the first sector. First lap times coming through on the board, courtesy of the 2 Ferraris. Carlos Sainz on on the medium tyre, a 1:17.4, with his teammate also on the mediums, Leclerc, a 1:17.8. Then comes the first of the soft runners, Alonso. But actually, Lando Norris is out there, and even though the graphic that we're seeing is saying that he's on a soft, he's not. He is on the medium tyre. Fastest of anybody in the first sector, good middle sector. So the front runners then feeling that they can go through quite cleanly on the medium tyre. Quite indicative of Sergio Perez having to go out there on the soft to begin with. But across the line for Lando Norris, fastest in the first sector, fastest in the final sector. Opening gambit, a 1:17.2, 2/10 clear of Sainz on the same tyre.
Yeah, very strong from Lando Norris and the McLaren. Obviously on the graphic it's saying soft. That wasn't everybody. That was on the medium compound, which is a very strong effort, I've got to say. As we see Oscar Piastri now, he's been through sector 1, obviously gone green because it's his first lap. Where is his second sector going to be? Oh, he's nearly a second down on his teammate.
No, it's not been a good middle sector. Again, he is on the medium tyre, so both McLarens, both Ferraris, both Mercedes on the medium tyre as well. So really, Sergio Perez is the only one from those top teams that has elected to go out on the soft tyre in the early running of Q1. Round the final corner for Piastri, and it's not a good lap. It's not a good opener for the Australian. Only enough for 8th fastest, a second off his teammate Lando Norris.
Now, this idea of the top teams going out on the medium tyre in the first part of qualifying, it's something we've not seen for a couple of years. It used to be quite commonplace under the old regulation set when the gap between the top 3 teams and the rest of the field was quite large. As the field's concertinaed up under these new regulations that were introduced in 2022, it's been much less common for it to happen, and people have had to go on the soft tyre but then sort of manage their use of them through the sessions because there aren't quite enough soft tyres allocated to the teams to do 2 runs in each session on them. So what McLaren and Ferrari have done is they've sort of taken their first run on the medium tyre, thinking that they might be able to get away with it. They might not, but it won't be so slow that they'll be in real trouble at the end of the session. Verstappen, meanwhile, also out on the soft tyre, coming to the end of his lap, and it's looking quite quick, Harry.
It is fastest in the first sector and in the middle sector, so both Red Bull drivers then not following that medium tyre trend. They're going on the softs round the final corner, and it is fastest for Verstappen by 0.2 of a second. But there is a tyre disparity there between Verstappen and Norris and Sainz. But the Williams drivers are also up there as well on the softs. Half a second behind is Alex Albon in 4th, Franco Colapinto rounding out the top 5. Then comes Hamilton. Leclerc is in 7th on another outlap right now. Russell is 8th ahead of Alonso. Lance Stroll rounds out the top 10. Then it's Piastri, Bottas, Gasly, Perez, Ocon, the top 15. Zhou Guanyu is 16th. And on laps at the moment, or on outlaps, we'll wait to see what they can do next time around. Tsunoda, Magnussen, Lawson and Nico Hülkenberg. So the majority of the drivers out on track at the moment as Fernando Alonso, the man entering his 400th Grand Prix weekend, makes his way down towards turn 1.
Now, this is interesting. Alonso's going for a second lap on the same set of softs. You don't normally see that. A racetrack's normally qualifying, 1 lap is what you get. We'll see how Alonso's lap goes, but it suggests that he feels that at least there's a chance that he might be able to improve on this second lap, which just underlines how gentle this track can be on tyres.
Fernando Alonso into the left-hander of turn 4. The Aston Martins haven't really been showing too much pace so far in the practice sessions that we've seen. In fact, Alonso didn't have the best start to this weekend, was feeling ill on Thursday during the media day, actually withdrew from his events to recover in time for FP2. Their reserve driver Felipe Drugovich took part in FP1, but that was always going to be the plan. His teammate Lance Stroll has just popped up into 4th, but Fernando Alonso has never started or finished here in the top 8, hoping to try and break that duct on what is a rather momentous weekend for the most experienced man in the field through the Forosol Stadium. Just a couple of corners left to go. The right-hander of turn 16 that leads you out onto the slightly banked, arcing right-hander. The pit lane entry is to your right. He stays onto the track. It's a good lap from Alonso. 3rd fastest, 0.3 down on Verstappen. Alonso doing that lap on a soft compound tyre.
So, based on the fact that I think the Aston Martin is probably 5th or 6th best car, I think that most people will potentially run again.
Well, how much is track evolution a thing here as well?
Well, it's quite a bit. There's no reason why Perez should be 1.5 seconds off his teammate. I mean, I know he went out 3 or 4 minutes earlier than Max, but still, that's a long way off. But there is quite a lot of evolution, it seems, in this track at the moment. I mean, we're seeing Yuki Tsunoda now popping up into P3, but he's actually been pretty quick all weekend.
Yeah, I can brake for low speed, mate.
That's Perez on the radio. I cannot brake for low speed. So he's really struggling. That's not the first time he said that either. Both cars talking about a lack of grip, braking issues during the practice session. So Perez is still out there, but he's down in 17th at the moment, only ahead of Ocon and Zhou. Liam Lawson is the last driver to set a first lap time. He puts the RB up into 7th. I'll tell you what, the RBs are looking strong here. Tsunoda within 0.3 of Verstappen. Tsunoda is 4th. Lawson half a second in 7th. There's strong opening outings for the two RB drivers.
Yeah, we saw actually Daniel Ricciardo was quick last year, wasn't he, when they visited Mexico. So I think the RBs certainly have something around here. Nico Hülkenberg now up to 3rd. This track is ramping up.
I think there's a lot of track evolution here. Pierre Gasly has just gone 2nd. We know they put some upgrades on that Alpine last time out, which seemed to work. Indeed, Gasly started 6th on the grid in Austin, the best start all year for Alpine. Couldn't quite convert that in the race, but certainly promising signs in Alpine's development program towards the end of the year as they really gear up for 2026. They'll still have another year to get through, though. Pierre Gasly being joined by Jack Doohan next year. What about the Mercedes drivers, though? We haven't seen too much of them so far, and what has been a real struggle couple of weekends for them. 4 offs for both drivers in 4 consecutive sessions going back to Austin. Big crash for George Russell on Friday practice. Lewis Hamilton running upgrades too, but both of them languishing down in 15th and 16th at the moment. They're on second run, so let's see how they fare. Russell's had a better first sector compared to Lewis Hamilton. Indeed, Russell has had a blinder of a middle sector and has found the fastest overall time, but the track evolving with just over 6 minutes left to run, and this first part of qualifying where we will eliminate the slowest 5 drivers. At the moment, Russell is in that slot, but as the sun glints off that silver arrow around the final corner, puts himself up into 4th, behind Hülkenberg and Gasly, though.
It seems like that Mercedes is just on such a knife edge. You underdrive it, you're slow. You overdrive it, and you're in the barrier or in the gravel, as we saw Lewis Hamilton last time out in Austin. They can be quick, but it's almost like they don't understand why.
Russell had the fastest middle sector, though, of anybody. Yuki Tsunoda is fastest in the final sector, with Carlos Sainz fastest in the first sector. Oscar Piastri is going to have another go at it as well. He needs to. He's down in 19th with just over 5 minutes left to go. On his first lap, though, the reason there was such a large pace deficit between himself and Lando Norris, over a second on his first lap, was because Piastri made a mistake. I think it was coming into the left-hander of turn 4, just a slight lock-up. Better lap this time around for Piastri, though, as he makes his way through the middle sector, through the right-hander of turn 10, that arcs seamlessly into the left-hander of turn 11, that feeds you out onto that short straight, another DRS zone into the braking zone of the right-hander of turn 12. Fastest of anybody for Oscar Piastri, but he really clouts the curb coming through the exit of turn 12. You can just hear the bouncing of the McLaren over those bumps. It really is a bit of a jolty ride through that stadium section.
Yeah, I don't think that was particularly clean. No, it wasn't. No. 13th for Piastri.
I wonder, because the angle we were watching, it was a camera that was looking back at Piastri's helmet. I wonder if there was a bigger mistake there coming out of the right-hander of turn 12. Norris goes fastest.
We safe? Negative. Negative?
So Russell is asking, George Russell from Mercedes is asking, are we safe? He's being told negative. Russell is 5th at the moment.
But this is what I meant earlier, Harry. I think that everybody is going to want to run again. Lando's safe now. Lando's done a good enough time, but everybody, I think, from Gasly down, will want to run again.
Sergio Perez is currently 20th and last, with Piastri in 19th. Zhou is 18th, Ocon is 17th, and Franco Colapinto is 16th. That is what the elimination zone looks like right now. If it were to end here, saying that, Colapinto has just put in a lap good enough to see the Williams driver through and up into 12th. We're just going to get another look, Sam, at what happened to Oscar Piastri now that we ride off board. We saw on board the bumpy ride he had.
That lap is deleted for track limits, turn 12.
So Tom Stallard, his engineer, saying that lap was deleted anyway for exceeding track limits on the exit of turn 12, but that's already lost all the time.
Yeah, that's a lot of lap time there, but he's got time to go again. I think that car is plenty quick enough to get through.
Magnussen, Ocon, Zhou, Piastri and Perez then all needing to go again. Esteban Ocon is actually currently sat in the pits. One thing we saw a lot in practice was actually the management of the traffic, particularly coming through the final sectors. You try and find a bit of space on your lap. So far, they've all been playing fairly nicely.
Well behaved.
Yeah.
Well behaved.
Piastri then on a lap that he needs to make count in the run down to turn 1, slams on the brakes, the DRS shuts, getting up to 346 kilometers an hour before he shifts down the gears through the right-hander of turn 1, out through 2, and then in the run down towards turn 4, a little bit of traffic in front of him in the form of Fernando Alonso in the Aston Martin, gets nicely out of the way. Piastri finding time, but he's down on Charles Leclerc's first sector. Charles Leclerc is only in 15th spot, so that his lap is not quite coming for Piastri. Let's see how he fares in the middle sector. Perez faring better on his lap around, but we know the stewards are watching track limits, and it is very easy to make a mistake around this track. We've seen that all weekend long at the moment. 2 minutes to go of Q1. It's Lando Norris and Max Verstappen who are sitting rather prettily at the top. Lando Norris is actually electing not to come out. He thinks he's safe. Verstappen crosses the line, improves his lap time, stays in second. Franco Colapinto in the Williams won't get another run out. He's in the pits with 1 minute and 43 to go. He's down in 13th, so Colapinto very much at risk. So too his teammate Albon in 5th. Well, he's actually up in 5th, so he might be okay, but Albon's in the pits, and it's not a good enough lap from Oscar Piastri. It only sees him go 14th, and it's not a good lap either for Sergio Perez, who can only manage 15th with cars behind going quicker, like the sound of Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari, who pops himself up into 3rd, and Perez is going to be eliminated in Q1 at his home Grand Prix.
I don't know about you, Harry, but that might have sealed Sergio Perez's Formula One future with Red Bull. Piastri's out. Piastri is out of qualifying.
Piastri, Perez, the big names to fall. We were saying in practice this might have been a weekend where Lando Norris really needs the support of his teammate Oscar Piastri, particularly on the opening laps, but he will not get that. Piastri is out in 16th at the moment. Perez just behind him in 17th. Those behind them were still waiting to complete laps from Valtteri Bottas. Esteban Ocon has only just embarked on a lap, and Zhou Guanyu at the moment also embarking on a lap. Can those drivers find anything to qualify ahead of Piastri and Perez? It's the Williams driver of Franco Colapinto who is at risk at the moment, and he's immediately pushed down into a Q1 exit for the Argentine because Valtteri Bottas crosses the line and gets that Sauber up into 14th spot. So Stroll now at risk here. Stroll is out on the track, coming across the line now, but I don't think it's going to be a good enough run for Lance Stroll to improve from 15th. It's not. We look towards Esteban Ocon, who is going strong. His teammate Pierre Gasly is currently up in 6th. What can Ocon do? Didn't have the upgrades on his Alpine last time out in Austin, at least not all of them. Just a few corners left to go then through the Forosol. Fernando Alonso in the Aston Martin gets nicely out of the way of the Frenchman, who will move to the Haas team next year. Round the final corner from Esteban Ocon. Can he get through into Q2? No, he cannot. Improves his time, doesn't improve his position, stays 19th. Zhou Guanyu is also not improving. He will qualify last once again, but the big name to fall, Mr. Perez. And that felt quite emotional from Sergio Perez's radio there as he is wheeled back into his garage. Perez, Sam, out in Q1.
Perez out in Q1, but I think the shock for me is Oscar Piastri.
Oscar, we've been knocked out, I'm afraid. We've been knocked out.
And that is Oscar Piastri being told the news. 2 big shocks there, Andrew Benson.
I agree with Sam. For me, Piastri is a bigger shock than Perez. Perez has been pretty rubbish for most of the season. Piastri, well, he's not had a great couple of races, but he's been, he's had a good season so far, but he's just fallen away in the last 2 or 3 races, and just when McLaren need him to be performing at the absolute top of his game to help Lando Norris's admittedly slim championship hopes, he's now been knocked out in Q1 in 2 consecutive race weekends in North America.
It seemed a little bit unnecessary, that, because clearly the pace is there in the car, and I know Lando has got the new floor, and that upgrade could be worth a little bit of lap time, but Oscar had the pace in FP3. Clearly he had the pace, and I don't know what's happened, whether he stayed on one set and whether they have overused that set, but that car was plenty quick enough. If he hadn't have exceeded track limits, he would have been through. I think going again, he didn't have the grip and maybe overheated the surface of the tyre. But that car was plenty quick enough. He is plenty quick enough. And yeah, the track limits and that mistake at turn number 12 has really caught him out.
Piastri was fastest in FP3 with a 1:16.4, and he only mustered a 1:17.5 as his final attempt. But as you say, did have one lap deleted, and now he's walking rather forlornly towards the FIA weighbridge with helmet on. Out at the end of Q1 then, the Williams of Franco Colapinto, the McLaren of Oscar Piastri, the Red Bull of Sergio Perez, the Alpine of Esteban Ocon, and the Sauber of Zhou Guanyu. So really the usual suspects, but Perez, who actually hasn't been knocked out in Q1, we've got to go back to I think we've got to go back to Hungary, really, where he started in 16th. So his qualifyings haven't been great, but that was the last time he was knocked out in Q1. And when the Forosol Stadium is packed out for you, that is going to be a bitter pill to swallow. And is that the nail in the coffin for Sergio Perez's Formula One career? With 5 races to go, Perez out of Q1 then. Good results though for the likes of Valtteri Bottas, making it through in the Sauber, getting through to Q2 by a whisker, up into 14th. He'll get another run out.
It was an interesting little vignette there on the telly. I thought the stadium was absolutely silent, and then on the sort of light strip along the top of the grandstand, they'd written applause in Spanish, and then only then did they start clapping and cheering. I guess which sums up how they're all feeling to see Sergio Perez go out in Q1 in his home Grand Prix, which is his Grand Prix effectively exists because of him, a bit like the Dutch Grand Prix exists because of Max Verstappen. Not quite on the same level, but I mean, we're looking at the TV pictures now. The stadium's absolutely full, and you know, they're mostly here for Sergio Perez. So there's a few McLaren, Ferrari caps in there as well, I can see. But yeah, it's a sobering weekend for him, and I do worry for his. Well, I don't worry for his Formula One future, because it's not my job to worry for his future. But this is definitely a worry for him for his future.
When you look at where Lawson made it through, Tsunoda up in 7th, Max Verstappen up in 3rd. But Sam, Lando Norris was quickest at the end of that session, so that is positive on the one side for McLaren. But as we said, this leaves him hanging a little bit on that opening lap. No matter where he starts, he's not going to have a teammate to maybe help him.
No, he's not. But you know, when you talk about lap 1, it's kind of everyone for themselves lap 1, but he won't have that help on strategy at the pit stop, for example, or he won't have somebody to help out and try and hold up maybe Ferraris or Red Bulls come the end of the race. But let's see. Oscar is more than capable of getting the car back into the points, but it does certainly make his life very, very challenging from all the way back there.
It certainly does then. So just to remind you, we've lost Franco Colapinto in the Williams out in Q1 for the 2nd consecutive weekend, although he did manage to claw his way back into the points last time out in Austin on that front. Oscar Piastri then, having been quickest at FP3 earlier today, out in 17th. Sergio Perez follows him in 18th, with Esteban Ocon out in Q1 in Mexico for the 2nd year in a row. It's 8th Q1 elimination of this season, and Zhou Guanyu once again the slowest driver in qualifying for the 7th consecutive race weekend. Those are your runners and riders out in this first part in qualifying, as we get ready then for Q2, where we'll have the 15 remaining drivers who will head out, and once again we will eliminate, after 15 minutes of running, the slowest 5 drivers. Good first Q1 for both Haas cars. Magnussen up there in 5th, Hülkenberg up there in 8th. Magnussen actually out-qualified Hülkenberg in Austin for the first time all season long, and it seems like there's been a bit of a renaissance for Haas in the last few races. They're on a good trajectory towards the end of the season.
Yeah, it's been a little bit better, hasn't it? I think Hulkenberg has had a pretty solid year, to be honest. Most of the races he's qualified pretty well, raced okay, and scored. He's kind of the 10th place man, 10th or 11th place man with the occasional better position. But, they've seemed to be doing better. I feel like they qualify better than they race, but certainly I think that they look better on a Saturday.
You wouldn't want to be the 11th place man, would you?
Well, but there was a run of, I can't remember where. If you look through your extensive notes there, Harry, I swear there's a run of 3-4 races where he was 11th.
Yeah, in a span of 5 races, he finished 4 of them in 11th and 1 retirement. That wasn't a good run for Nico Hulkenberg.
That is really horrid.
But the man who will be seeing off his Haas career with 5 races left to run, the German, will join the Sauber project next year before it becomes Audi. His teammate still yet to be confirmed. Kevin Magnussen out of the Haas seat as well at the end of the year. We do believe that will be his last shots at driving, at least in Formula 1, but where he will go, we wait to see. Perhaps crossing over the pond once again, like he did when he first got ousted at Haas, but having a good run of it towards the end of the year is K-Mag, as we get Q2 underway, 14 minutes on the clock.
And good news, the Ferrari front-end mechanic was very nice and slow when walking backwards. If anybody missed that, then you'll probably be able to find it on any social media channels. The Ferrari front jack mechanic on Charles Leclerc's side decided to do like a reverse backward flip thing in the pit lane, didn't he?
Yeah, well, he was sort of running backwards quite quickly, as they would normally do, to clear the way for Charles Leclerc's car, and it's a man called Alessandro who is his number 1 mechanic. And so quick he was, I think he caught himself out that he got all up on his heels, fell backwards, and then saved it by just doing a full-on backflip roll.
It was very impressive.
And cheeky smile at the end, and then we got a thumbs up from the camera a little later on, so he was all fine, and Charles Leclerc even made a nod to it on the radio as well. So I think he'll be watching his step the next time he sends Charles Leclerc on his way. But we get running then back underway for Q2. Charles Leclerc is out there on the track along with his teammate Carlos Sainz. So too is Max Verstappen, and Alex Albon in the Williams is heading down to turn 1 right now, with the best qualifying here in Mexico, 5th back in 2019, although that big crash in FP1 meant he missed the whole of FP2, so really on the back foot. But they've lost 1 car in Q1, but they have managed to make it through with 1 car into Q2, so small crumbs for Williams at this stage.
I've been impressed with Colapinto though so far in his short-lived Formula 1 career so far. I think he's impressed quite a few people, to the point where he's been touted around in a couple of seats, hasn't he, Harry?
Yeah, well, there is that 1 remaining seat alongside Nico Hulkenberg next year that many are touting Colapinto for, or perhaps to end up at the RB team, maybe alongside Yuki Tsunoda if Liam Lawson is promoted into Sergio Perez's seat. We know Christian Horner's actually quite publicly saying how impressed he is by Franco Colapinto. Indeed, the entire grid are, but he is out of Q1, so we won't be seeing him reappear onto the track. His teammate, though, is, and that's the sound of Alex Albon up through the gears round the final corner. First lap time on the board with the soft tyre to 1:17.090. We'll see what Max Verstappen has. He'll be the next driver to come across the line, coming through the stadium sector now. The Foro Sol, built back in 1993 primarily for concerts, the former home of one of the Mexican baseball teams. You can fit about 55,000 people in that stadium, and they all just watch Sergio Perez fall out of Q1. Meanwhile, his teammate Max Verstappen crosses the line, just goes fastest with a 1:16.6, so decent opening gambit there from the Dutchman.
The Ferraris are looking strong, Harry. Ferraris are looking very strong. We're watching Charles Leclerc coming through the Foro Sol, through the right-hander towards the end of the lap, squirming to get on the power, crossing the line. Only 3rd, actually, behind Alex Albon, who sits in 2nd. And quite a long way back, so maybe that's a used set of tyres for Leclerc. What does Sainz do? 2nd.
I'll tell you what, Sainz has actually been looking a little stronger in terms of pace so far compared to Leclerc. Sainz does slot in to 2nd. It's Charles Leclerc who's the man that has started on pole here twice previously, last year and in 2019. just getting another look at Max Verstappen's first fly. Did he get a little bit caught on the curb coming through turns 9 and 10?
Yeah, he had a little kick of oversteer there on the curb. Basically, the floor it is on the middle of the curb, but it's bottomed out.
Were a bit tricky. Sector 2. What does that mean, Max? Yes, low grip.
We've heard him say that a lot this weekend. Low grip.
Yeah, but for me, that's where the floor of the car has been bottoming out on the curb, and as we see Charles Leclerc have a big moment in Sector 2 as well. I think that's what really sideways for Charles Leclerc.
Well, that's what would have cost Leclerc his lap time, a second off Max Verstappen for Charles Leclerc. In fact, I think he had his lap time deleted for track limits at turn 2 anyway, so Charles Leclerc will have to go again. Indeed, he had a massive swap on that Ferrari in pretty much exact same fashion as Alex Albon did in FP1. Albon didn't correct it, or overcorrected it in that instant, and went straight for the barriers. Charles Leclerc holding on to his Ferrari for dear life. He's come back to the pits actually before he goes out again. 9 minutes and 14 seconds on the clock. Only 3 lap times on the board so far. Verstappen fastest, a 1:16.6. Then comes Carlos Sainz, a 1:17.0. Albon in third, but cars out on track. Magnussen, Hülkenberg, Bottas, all going well at the moment. Hülkenberg finding a really good first sector lap time actually. Kevin Magnussen showing well too. So the Haas cars are strong here. Could be a nice battle brewing between Haas and RB. Both have been looking quite good over one lap pace in that fight over 6th place in the Constructors. Kevin Magnussen will cross the line first in these opening runs in Q2. Everybody out there on the soft tyre, round the final corner for K-Mag, and pops up into 4th behind Albon in the Williams. Not much splitting them though, about a 10th. Nico Hülkenberg, his teammate, will follow him through round the final corner. What has Hülkenberg got to show? Not as quick as his teammate Magnussen, just behind him. Couple of tenths though, separating the 2 Haas cars, 4th and 5th, with Valtteri Bottas slotting into Q2 in 6th in these early stages. Indeed, Bottas has now finally ended a 5-race run of Q1 eliminations. That's his worst career run in his entire career, so he'll be pleased to get that off his chest. But he's immediately demoted one position because Yuki Tsunoda, once again showing good form in RB, up to 5th, but Pierre Gasly, quick in Q1, once again quick in Q2, up to 3rd.
Yeah, the Alpine's working nicely this weekend with those upgrades. We're now watching Lando Norris purple in Sector 1 by over 2 tenths.
Lando Norris then looking for his first pole position around this Mexico City circuit. He'll need to get through into Q3 first, but top to Q1 has been looking very, very good as he makes his way now down through the middle sector into the right-hander of turn 12 that feeds you into that stadium section when you loop your way through the left-hander of 14. The slight right-hand kink of 15, 16. Then it's a double almost right-hander, slightly banked, that brings you out through turn 17 and across the line. And Lando Norris goes fastest by over 3 tenths of a second. So 1:16.301 for the Brit.
Things you like to see. Things you like to see, Harry.
That's the voice of McLaren Formula E driver Sam Bird, alongside myself, Harry Benjamin. We've also got the BBC's F1 correspondent Andrew Benson in the booth, and with just over 6.5 minutes left, it is looking rather rosy for McLaren, but only one car left in it.
I am not biased at all.
No,
there's no bias here. We're completely impartial.
We bring you in here for your neutrality and your expert commentary.
Absolutely.
But it is Norris fastest in these early stages. Charles Leclerc had his lap time deleted. It was a tough lap anyway. He exceeded track limits in turn 2, and we're just about to see how that happened through the right-hander of turn 1, and actually kind of just cut the corner at turn 2.
It goes to show how good the Ferrari is over curbs, though. I've got to say, Ferrari and McLaren over curbs are so much better than the Red Bull.
Charles Leclerc taking the bumps and managing to get through. But just a reminder then, no Oscar Piastri. He was knocked out in Q1 along with Sergio Perez. 17th and 18th, they were knocked out. The big names to fall in the early stages of the Mexican Grand Prix. Lando Norris, though, looking good for now. 3 tenths clear of Verstappen. Then comes Russell. Hamilton, Sainz is 5th. Gasly is 6th ahead of Albon. Tsunoda 8th ahead of Lawson. Then comes Alonso in 10th. Magnussen is 11th. Stroll 12th. Hülkenberg 13th. Bottas is 14th and Charles Leclerc 15th. No time on the board, and it will be those slowest 5 drivers who will be eliminated in the next 5 minutes and 16 seconds. That will be Magnussen, Stroll, Hülkenberg, Bottas and Leclerc. But they will all come out for another lap as we now get into this sort of little lull period in the middle of Q2.
There'll be a couple of minutes now where tyres are coming off. Either new set of soft compound tyres will be going on. Drivers will now be speaking directly to their engineers and their software and data engineers to see if there's anything else they can learn.
Unsure I'll improve, it would be close.
Yeah, we think the jump to new tyres is quite big, George.
Yeah, Ethan, but obviously everyone else has already done new tyres, so they're going to make less of a jump.
So that's George Russell there discussing what to do with their tyre strategy for the final runs. The team saying, well, the jump is quite big as we've seen, but Russell's not convinced that actually it will be as big as they think if he sticks and reuses his current tyre.
I think he's got to go for another new set. You know, if you look at where the cutoff is at the moment, which is 8.5, 9 tenths off, George Russell, okay, he's third, but he's 6.5 tenths off Lando Norris. So it's very, very close between third and 10th. I think he's got to go for another set of new softs just to get through. Worry about what you do in the top 10, but get through to the top 10.
George Russell, currently in third, started from the pit lane last weekend in Austin, made his way all the way up to 6th place, has a best qualifying around this circuit of second on the front row back in 2022. And has been recovering really ever since that big crash in FP2, but that hasn't deterred him. Still showing flashes of pace, but those Mercedes cars, both Russell and Hamilton, about 6 tenths off Norris at the moment. And well, the balance doesn't always look quite consistent on board the Mercedes cars. Albon crosses the line in 5th, 6 tenths adrift, nearly 7 tenths adrift for the Williams driver, but showing strong form. The sole remaining Williams, we lost Franco Colapinto, who didn't quite make it through into Q2, but big lap needed from the likes of Charles Leclerc, whose lap time so far consisted of a track limits violation and a mistake as well. Makes his way through the left-hander of turn 2. That was where he was done for track limits as he embarks on his flying lap with the soft tyre on board. New sets on board that Ferrari, and he's fastest of anybody in the first sector. Gets it slowed down just about for the left-hander of turn 4. Slow corners here through 5, 6 and 7. Take you round and almost back on yourself before you'll then set straight into the S's of 7, the left-hander, then 8, the right-hander, taking a bit of curve through turn 9 where Charles Leclerc had a really big snap on that last fly he did. Much smoother this time around from Charles Leclerc.
It looked like he took a little bit too much speed into turn 4, compromising turn 5 and getting quite weak traction on the exit of 5, but the Ferrari's been pretty strong in sector 3. This should see him through comfortably, but where will he filter into the top 3? Is it going to be first, second or third? It's third across the line.
Third time for charm for Charles Leclerc. Fastest of anybody in the first sector, puts him third fastest, about 3.5 tenths down on Lando Norris. His teammate Carlos Sainz, though, goes quicker, gets within 2 tenths of Lando Norris. Carlos Sainz third, Charles Leclerc fourth. Russell and Hamilton both on outlaps. I imagine we've seen the last of Alex Albon in the Williams. He's just come back into the pits, currently in 7th, so eyes will be on Gasly, Tsunoda, Lawson. Can they throw a spanner into the works with their Williams rival and that fascinating fight in the mid-pack? Fernando Alonso never ruled out the wily old fox on his 400th Grand Prix weekend, currently in 11th. With Lewis Hamilton just saying on the radio, this could be tight with time. Hamilton is currently out on track in 6th. Let's just see where he is, though, on the actual track in terms of traffic. He's coming through turns 4 and 5 now. He's got less than a minute on the clock. He's right, that will be a little bit tight because he's got a lot of traffic in front of him as well, and he can't slow down too much because he's got Magnussen on a fast lap and Hülkenberg both flying behind him.
I think he's going to be okay. I think it's not ideal, especially for tyre preparation, as he always having to go offline. Hülkenberg coming through. Hülkenberg down in 14th at the moment, needs a good lap to try and get through to Q3, something that he's done quite a few times actually this season.
He certainly has. His teammate right now, though, Kevin Magnussen, has been looking the quicker of the two. Ahead at the moment. Magnussen will come across the line first. Both Haas's affected by traffic on their lap. Magnussen up into 8th, immediately pulls over to the right-hand side. We've got a yellow flag out in Sector 3 as Hülkenberg comes across the line. 8th passes. It's gone to a red flag because we have got an RB in the wall, and it's Yuki Tsunoda who has found the wall in the Foro Sol section on the exit of the Foro Sol. He says he's okay on the radio, but Tsunoda has been looking so quick all weekend long. In 11th place right now, has found the barrier, brought out the red flag with 10 seconds left to go, so we won't get this session restarted, and that unfortunately has ruined his teammates' chances. Lawson, Alonso, Stroll and Bottas, who was already in the pits. But Tsunoda moving inside the cockpit then, but a little bit wedged into the wall. At first glance, it didn't look like there was too much damage, but he certainly got into the wall and to the Tech Pro barrier and moved it along slightly. So we'll try and get another look at that crash and see exactly what happened.
I think Yuki Tsunoda has just become Alexander Albon's best friend. I think that's kind of saved the Williams driver up in 7th place. I'll tell you what else I think about that, Harry. I think Yuki Tsunoda's been on great form this weekend, but he's been driving as if his life depends on this weekend, knowing that Liam Lawson's come in. He's the favoured one to get that seat at Red Bull. He knew that he had an opportunity. Sergio Perez has just been eliminated in Q1. He's on good form. I think he's probably just pushing that little bit too hard.
This is the sound of Yuki Tsunoda then. Oh, and he lost it coming into the Foro Sol section, under braking into the right-hander of turn 12, Sam.
Yeah, just locking the rears. Oh, lock the fronts, then the brake bias migrates to the rear, taking too much speed in, trying to get the car to turn. The rear tyres saying no thank you, and in she goes.
He's gone in rear first, damage to the rear wing, tried to save it, was never going to. Tsunoda pushing right at the final stages of Q2.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Apologising over the radio there, Tsunoda jumping out of the car. That would have been a decent lap as well. It might well have got him above Albon, who ended 7th. The two Haas cars both through, and Gasly, so that's a reprieve for those drivers. As the recovery begins then for Yuki Tsunoda's RB, he is out in 11th, ahead of his teammate Liam Lawson 12th, Fernando Alonso 13th, Lance Stroll 14th, and Valtteri Bottas 15th, all knocked out of Q2, which ends under red flag for the stricken RB car of Yuki Tsunoda. So while we wait to get Q3 underway, which will be delayed as we get the car out of the way for Tsunoda and have some barrier repairs, a couple of big names we lost in Q1, Sergio Perez being one, the other being Lando Norris's teammate Oscar Piastri, and he's out of the car and he spoke with Lawrence Barretto.
Hey Oscar, obviously a really tough session out there, scrappy, guess a couple of opening laps. Just talk me through it and then the pressure that you were under in that final lap.
Yeah, I mean the medium I just didn't have much confidence on, and then the soft lap I was doing was very positive, and then I just went wide at turn 12 and it was as simple as that. So then we tried to go again, but I just had zero grip. The tyres were too hot, so disappointing.
How tough do you think it's going to be to recover anything today? Can you take much hope from this morning where the car looked good?
Yeah, I mean I think the car is very good. Yeah, it's just a shame that we have to start from the back tomorrow, so we'll try and see what we can do. But yeah, I mean, you know, ironically it was a similar position for Lando last year and he still had a good race, so there's still opportunities.
That is true from Oscar Piastri. Lando Norris qualified 19th last year, raced all the way up to 5th, so not all quite lost yet for the Australian in the McLaren, but perhaps an even bigger loss for Sergio Perez on home soil, also out in Q1 in 18th. He's also been speaking to Lawrence.
Into the low speed, I cannot brake, I cannot stop the car. as soon as I attacked the braking, I started sliding. So that is definitely my main issue at the moment. Is where I'm struggling the most, and I think here it showed even more. Every time I try to attack the braking, I'm just locking up.
How much did it hurt that obviously you had that performance? Every time you were out on track, the crowd would cheer and you just weren't able to deliver?
No, it's obviously the worst place for it to happen. It's super disappointed. But still there is 4 races to go, and I really want to we have to get on top of it as a team, and I hope tomorrow we can enter to the points, but it's going to be a very difficult weekend.
And you can hear the disappointment in Perez's voice there, can't you, Sam? Do you think he can do anything tomorrow? Theoretically, he should be able to cut through the field.
I mean, theoretically, he's got the one of the top 3 cars out there on the grid. So theoretically, yes, but we've seen a bit of a shift, I think, with Sergio Perez from a slightly earlier career to early days at Red Bull, where he was aggressive with his overtakes. Now he seems a little bit more timid, a little bit more afraid to go for that move, very different to his teammate. He's definitely lacking confidence, severely lacking pace. I mean, all the time here, Q1, 8/10 off his teammate. He doesn't look like a driver that's got any confidence at the moment. And okay, he might be struggling with front locking in slow speed, but 8/10 is a lot of time. If it was 2 or 3/10 off Max, yes, fine, okay, slow speed front locking, but 8/10 is an awful lot of lap time to be giving away.
It certainly is. Well, Perez and Piastri with the big names knocked out in Q1. In Q2, we've lost Tsunoda, Lawson, the 2 RBs, 11th and 12th, Alonso, 13th, Stroll, 14th, Bottas, 15th.
The thing is, though, Sam, half a second is about what he was off Verstappen as a sort of general rule, as an average. So if you build in the initial half a second and then add 2 or 3 tenths for brake locking, makes sense. And that's the problem. Half a second is not good enough for the second Red Bull driver, even if it is Max Verstappen, who's your teammate, and probably, well, arguably every driver on the grid might struggle to get to beat Max Verstappen. Obviously people like Lewis Hamilton, Charles Leclerc and Lando Norris would take issue with that, but basically everyone in Formula 1 thinks Max Verstappen is the best driver out there, and Sergio Perez isn't. And so it kind of makes sense in a way, even though the gap looks really big, but it's but for Red Bull it's not good enough. That's the bottom line.
When Sergio Perez has had a blinding day and Max has had an average Max day, he can compete, and we've seen Sergio Perez win races in this Red Bull. So I think the Sergio Perez that we've seen this year is definitely not the best version of Sergio Perez in Red Bull, that's for sure.
Well, it'll be a long race for both Sergio Perez and Oscar Piastri, starting down in 17th and 18th for tomorrow's Grand Prix. 71 laps ahead of them as we gear up for Q3, which has just been delayed slightly while we get the barriers repaired for Yuki Tsunoda's car that went into the barriers in the runoff area at turn 12, which brought out a red flag with about 10 seconds to go of Q2.
The other thing, Harry, is that yet again it's another race weekend where Lando Norris needs something and Max Verstappen's not letting him have it. You know, Verstappen had a really difficult day on Friday, basically didn't get any practice at all pretty much because of an engine problem, and the car, he wasn't happy with the car this morning, just the same as Perez wasn't happy with his car this morning, not this morning but in final practice today. And yet here Verstappen is second fastest, and the 2 Ferraris don't seem to be able to do anything about him. So, I mean, we don't know it's going to end up this way. We don't know that Norris and Verstappen again will end up on the front row together again. But it looks rather like it at the moment. And for Norris, that's not good enough in the championship. He needs help from other people, and the other people just aren't giving it to him.
The other thing is, you've got Carlos Sainz, Charles Leclerc. They're both on form at the moment. Red Bull are really in danger of losing second in the Constructors' Championship this year, considering they definitely had the best car at the beginning of the year. I would argue now that it's not the best car. I would say the McLaren and the Ferrari are probably edging ahead right now based on current form, but they had such a lead. So for them to fall away, it's not this is not Max Verstappen's fault. This is the second seat's fault. Sergio Perez has not scored enough points at all this season.
Yeah, well, there's a couple of things going on. First of all is Perez's underperformance, absolutely. But the other thing is, I can't remember a year, I don't think, or it's really hard to remember a year, where one team starts in such incredibly good form. I mean, they were basically close to half a second a lap quicker than anybody else at the start of the year. Looked like they were going to do even better than they did last year, which was the most dominant season in Formula One history. And suddenly, it just all started to change. It began with McLaren's now famous Miami upgrade, which brought them right into Red Bull's ballpark. Now, Lando Norris took a bit of luck with the safety car to win that race, but didn't alter the fact that he was the quickest car on track once he got some clear air after a difficult start. And ever since then, McLaren have been right on Red Bull's pace, and they've just kept moving forward. And Ferrari came up a bit, then dropped back a bit, and now they've got to that level, or reasonably close to that level, certainly level with Red Bull. Whereas Red Bull haven't really made any progress. They've done some interestingly good things, Red Bull, this year. I mean, obviously it's still a very good car. They got on top of Singapore, which they were really worried going into Singapore after last year when Verstappen could only finish 6th after qualifying outside the top 10. I know for a fact that Red Bull went into Singapore this year thinking they were going to have another weekend that was just like the one they had last year, but they didn't. Verstappen put it on the front row. Now, again, he got some help from other people. Charles Leclerc, McLaren believes, should have been on the front row at least there with Lando Norris. Then, obviously, that race would have looked a bit different if it was Norris and Leclerc at the front with Verstappen third, but still Verstappen would have been third. But generally, they've just not been able to keep up the development rate, Red Bull, that McLaren and Ferrari have found. And you're absolutely right. The car is probably the third quickest car in Formula One right now, on an average. On an average over the whole season, by the way, it's still the quickest, but averages don't count for performance today. The performance today is no question that McLaren's the best car, generally, and it looks very much like Ferrari in the last 3 or 4 races has become the second fastest car. And you have to say, hats off to Max Verstappen. While all that's been going on, while Red Bull have been losing their way, while there's been turmoil in the team, they've lost the greatest designer in Formula One history in Adrian Newey. The sporting director's leaving the team. Their chief strategist is going to leave the team. He's still there, but he's resigned and is going to McLaren soonish. While all that's been going on, Max Verstappen has been ice cold in the middle, and he's just kept delivering absolutely the maximum that he can every single weekend, and he has carried that team through quite a dip in form, and if he ends up winning the World Championship, which it looks like he will thoroughly deserve it.
Yeah, he seems like the kind of guy that outside noise just doesn't affect him. He wants to get in that car and drive that car to the maximum that he can, which is already the quickest that anybody can in the world currently. But that's all he's interested in, and winning races. Everything else, it doesn't matter. Who's leaving the team, who's joining the team. Of course he wants the best people, but all he cares about is getting in that car and going quicker than everybody else and getting to the checkered flag faster than everybody else.
Does Red Bull's dip in form and perhaps lack of keeping up in the development race, Andrew, can any of that stem back to the penalty they were given for exceeding the cost cap a couple of years ago? Could any of that rear its head, or is that not really a factor here?
So Q3's just got going again, by the way. You can hear Max Verstappen leaving the pits. Just briefly, it all factors in, Harry. So, bottom line is there's several things going on in Formula 1 at the moment, trying to equalise out the field. There's a cost cap, and then there is there's a sliding scale of aerodynamic research, and what that means is that the team that was the leading the championship in the previous at the end of the previous half season gets the least amount of aerodynamic research time. And the team that was last gets the most, and there's a sliding scale between one and the other. And Red Bull have been leading the Constructors' Championship basically at every 6-month period to now, from the beginning of 2022 basically. And of course they had the extra 10% of aerodynamic research time that they lost, because in the first half in the whole of 2022 because of the budget cap breach in 2021. Sorry, it was from the end of 22, wasn't it, to the end of 2023, October to October. So you add all that together, they've had the least amount of aerodynamic research of everybody. So they did a great job to design the car in the first place, but it obviously is there then commensurately harder for them to develop their car compared to everybody else because they've had the least time to do it. So add that all together, and that's partly what you're seeing now, and the fact they say that Adrian Newey leaving didn't have an effect, but I don't think you can lose someone of that calibre with such a broad spectrum of talent, because he's not just a designer, he's also a brilliant race engineer, he's incredibly experienced. I don't think you can take someone like that out of the day-to-day operations of a race team and not lose something.
And all of that underlining what you say about Max Verstappen and his performances both in the car and off it, actually, in keeping that team together. And it is Verstappen who embarks on his first flyer. Q3 then underway, and the first flying laps just about to be set with 9 minutes and 31 seconds on the clock. The soft tyres bolted on to the 10 remaining cars. This the top 10 shootout and the fight for pole position. Right now it does look like Lando Norris in the McLaren has the advantage, but rule out Max Verstappen if you dare. The two Ferraris both looking strong and are both in the hunt. Carlos Sainz looking the quicker of the two so far. Both Mercedes still here as well, and good results for the two Haas cars. Both Hülkenberg and Magnussen through into Q3, and Albon the sole remaining Williams, along with another Q3 appearance, back-to-back Q3 appearances for Pierre Gasly in the Alpine. So upgrades serving Alpine well, having introduced them last time out. And after the first runs in the first sector, it's Verstappen who is quicker than Lando Norris coming through the first sector, and he's fast through the middle sector as well. Hulkenberg goes quickest of anybody as he comes across the line, as Magnussen actually comes across the line first to 1:18.1, followed by Hulkenberg, who pips him by about half a second. Verstappen comes out of the final corner now, and for his first lap, what's he got for us? It'll be a 1:16.368, 1.2 seconds clear of Hulkenberg, but crucially Lando Norris will be the next one to cross the line. He's slower than Verstappen in the first and the middle sector. What's he got in the final sector? Not enough. A 1:16.9, and that's the biggest gap we've seen in Verstappen's favour so far this weekend.
Well, I think that might be Max Verstappen on a set of new and Norris on a set of used, Andrew, or what do you think the tyre situation was there?
Well, the timing screens say no. The timing screens say they're both on new tyres, but the timing screens have been haywire all session, so I wouldn't be confident in saying one way or the other.
Yeah, the timing screens don't always tell you the truth sometimes. Carlos Sainz is going well, though, in the first sector, faster than anybody, quicker than Verstappen's time. Gasly pops his Alpine up into third. Indeed, Sainz has been running so well throughout these qualifying sessions so far. Leclerc a little bit off him in the first and middle sectors. Leclerc crosses the line first, though. He's had a great final sector for the Monegasque. Puts himself up into second within half a tenth of a second of Verstappen. What about Carlos Sainz? Rounds the final corner, and he comes around and hugs that inside line almost into the pit wall to try and shorten the distance to the checkered flag, and 0.3 of a second is the gap between Carlos Sainz and now Charles Leclerc, because Max Verstappen's lap time has been deleted for exceeding track limits. So no lap time for Verstappen as Russell and Hamilton come across the line third and fourth. Opening lap times then, and it's Ferrari the favourites, Sainz and Leclerc 1 and 2.
I tell you what, I saw Max Verstappen do that, but I didn't think anything of it at the time. Here I was about to see it on a replay. He cuts right across the inside of the turn 2 inside apex curb. There you go. Lots of drivers have been doing that today, I've noticed, from the overhead shot of that corner. So when Verstappen did it again, I didn't think anything of it. I thought they just weren't policing that, but obviously they are doing, because it must have been what happened to Leclerc, because he also got a turn 2 track limits violation. Did it again in turn 3
as well.
Yeah. So 2 corners there he's done that, Verstappen, and so it must have been the same thing that happened to Leclerc in Q2, now Verstappen in Q3. And I have to say, Sam, on that run for Lando Norris, either he was on used tyres or he made some kind of catastrophic mistake, because there's no way he's
been on much better form than that, hasn't he?
Yeah.
The reason why Max Verstappen is doing that is simply it is a shorter distance between 2 and 3 there. It opens up the exit out of turn 3. You can carry more speed, and by taking that much curb, it actually negates the big sausage curb, because he's riding the lower half of the inside of the curb, if you understand where I'm coming from, Harry.
The car definitely feels different in quali compared to P3.
That's Lewis Hamilton on the radio saying the car's feeling different in quali compared to how it felt in FP3. It's not the first time that there's been such shifts in how that Mercedes performs between sessions, but we thought we'd seen the last of that from Mercedes when they finally found a way forward. But it just seems like these old problems are starting to rear their head again with both Mercedes cars. Saying that at the moment, well, still waiting a proper lap time from Max Verstappen. Russell 4/10 off in third, Hamilton almost 6/10 off in fourth, but Norris also to go again for a better lap time because he cannot be 8/10 off Carlos Sainz.
I tell you what, Harry, this makes this last run even more interesting than usual, because we've now got the two title contenders, both with massive jeopardy on them. Verstappen's 10th because he had no times on that first run because it was deleted. Norris only 5th. They've both really got to deliver massive pressure on them, and if there's a red flag, then they're stuffed.
And we've seen that before. We're going to get another look at Carlos Sainz coming round the final corner on his fast lap. I noticed that he really hugs that inside line, Sam, doesn't he? There kicks up the dust as well. I didn't really think that this track was one of those where you would try and sort of cut the corner there. But obviously he felt like he would gain time.
Even if it's 5 centimetres shorter to do that, if he's not scrubbing too much speed, you would go for the line of the shortest line to the timing line.
I think it goes to show just how much downforce these cars have now, because the traditional line through that corner is right out wide. People would often brush their tyres against the outside barrier there in years gone by to enable the car to run free to gather as much speed as possible. Obviously they've got so much downforce and grip now that they can basically afford to take whatever line they want through that corner and still get as much grip as they need, and therefore if you've got no issue with grip, obviously you want to make the shortest distance possible.
3.5 minutes then left of Q3 as we set the grid for the Mexico City Grand Prix. One more lap each for the 10 remaining drivers, and particular focus towards our title protagonists. Max Verstappen, who has a 57-point advantage over Lando Norris, but neither right now are on the front row. That belongs to the Ferraris of Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc. It's Sainz on provisional pole. Verstappen is quick. He had his first lap time deleted for exceeding track limits. We've seen Norris set a lap time, but it's not representative compared to where he has been so far throughout Q1 and Q2. We're expecting both to find more time. But can the Ferraris throw a spanner in the works here? The Mercedes seem a little bit adrift of those front runners, and not forgetting the battle in the lower half of the top 10 ferociously between the Alpine, the Williams and the Haas cars, all scrapping it out for the final spaces in the top 10. Can one of those drivers spring a surprise and upset the Apple car at the front row of the grid? We shall see, but the grandstands are absolutely packed out in Mexico City with Sergio Perez and Red Bull merchandise. No Perez in Q2 or Q3. He was knocked out in the first part, down in 18th, along with Oscar Piastri. So Lando Norris will not have his McLaren teammate with him in this qualifying session. Disaster sessions for both the McLaren drivers and for both the McLaren driver and the Red Bull driver. Piastri and Perez will have a long afternoon on Sunday. But before we get there, less than 2 minutes to go then. Final flies being set. Sam, this is a big lap for Lando Norris.
Big lap for Lando Norris incoming. I mean, if he wants to at least have a chance of winning this Formula One World Championship, I think this lap needs to be stuck on pole position.
Carlos Sainz, the quickest of anybody right now, and has looked like he's just had a slight edge over Charles Leclerc so far in these qualifying sessions. But we know, and from history and the data, it's usually Leclerc who has a couple of tenths over Sainz. So it's something clicking a little bit better for the Spaniard this time around. His teammate, though, Leclerc, comes across the line and embarks on his final flying lap, getting up to speeds of over 340 kilometers an hour down the 1.2 kilometer straight that takes you, hurtles you into turn one. When you slam on the brakes, the DRS slams shut into the right-hander of turn one, into the left-hander of turn two. Don't cut across the apex. you will have your lap time deleted. Leclerc has had that done to him before you know it, you're down into turn 4, the 90-degree left-hander. Fastest of anybody in the first sector for Charles Leclerc, just the start he needed.
Yeah, and better through turn 4 and turn 5 from Charles Leclerc. Didn't take excess speed into 4 to compromise 5. That was executed really well. But what's he got in sector 2?
Carlos Sainz is quicker in sector 1. Verstappen less than a 10th off Sainz's initial first sector lap time. It's going to be nip and tuck at the front. Albon crosses the line in 7th spot. Let's see if he can hold on to it or get shuffled down. He won't get another lap time. Leclerc will be the first of the front runners to come across the line. Norris has just come through the first sector as well. We'll see what he's got through the middle. Gasly into 6th spot in the Alpine. Kevin Magnussen is up into 5th. Leclerc across the line, improves his time, can't improve his position, cements 2nd, but will he be dropped down? Carlos Sainz crosses the line, improves on his time. It's provisional pole for Carlos Sainz. Can they make it a front row lockout? What will Lando Norris have to say about this? What will Max Verstappen have to say about this? He splits the Ferraris. Verstappen onto the front row in 2nd. All eyes on the man who is 2nd in the championship, Lando Norris, quickest of anybody in the middle sector. Can he get on pole? Can he qualify ahead of his rival? No, but he'll start right behind him. Norris in 3rd for the time being. It's Carlos Sainz on pole, Verstappen alongside, Norris 3rd, Leclerc 4th, as we await to see what the 2 Mercedes can do. They haven't been in the running so far compared to the Red Bull, the McLaren and the Ferraris, but who will out-qualify each other? George Russell cements 5th place. Hamilton will come behind him, making his way through the Foro Sol, out through the final corner. Once again, Russell out-qualifying Lewis Hamilton, who comes home in 6th. But it is pole position for Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari. The first pole position for the Spaniard since 2023 at the Singapore Grand Prix, where he went on to drive a masterful, clever race to secure the win. Here he is.
Yes, Paul. 2 laps. 2 laps. 2 laps, yeah. We're smooth out there.
And he's absolutely right. Both lap times would have been good enough to secure pole position for Carlos Sainz. What a result for the Spaniard, who takes his 6th career pole position. And it's Ferrari who get the better of both Red Bull and McLaren, Sam.
In fairness, I think Carlos Sainz has looked the strongest all the way through that qualifying session. He's been really, really good all weekend. He's been quicker than Charles Leclerc from the get-go, and I think that's a well-deserved pole position for the Spaniard.
For the man that is seeing out the end of his Ferrari tenure before he makes way for Lewis Hamilton next year, there won't be many more chances in the short term, at least, for Carlos Sainz when he moves to Williams in 2025 to secure pole positions, to be in the hunt for Grand Prix victories. He will soak up every last moment he can get while wearing the scarlet red overalls. He clambers out of his Ferrari, a wave to the fans, a thumbs up to the cameras, immediately over to his team, who greet him there with a hug as well. That was a brilliant lap, 2 brilliant laps from Carlos Sainz, who will start the Mexico City Grand Prix on pole position. Alongside him, Max Verstappen on the front row, the 2 former teammates when they were at Toro Rosso, coming in to their Formula One careers. But crucially, Sam, Verstappen ahead of Lando Norris. But you know what? I don't think that's the end of the world, considering how long that straight is down to turn 1.
No, I don't think it's the end of the world at all. I think we're in for a really intriguing race tomorrow, though, with Sainz on pole, Verstappen, Norris, Leclerc. I think that is very tasty going into turn 1.
It certainly is. Now just a little further down the field, you're just hearing the sound of Hulkenberg, who threw away his lap, riding over the exit curb, coming out of turn 12, qualified down in 10th, quite a way off, and actually out-qualified by teammate Kevin Magnussen for only the 5th time this year, but back-to-back out-qualifications for Kevin Magnussen over Nico Hulkenberg, and then Charles Leclerc lose more time coming through the S's there. Another snap coming through turn 9 for Leclerc.
Oh, he's had that was the same in Q1, I think it was. Either FP3 or Q1, he had exactly the same snap. So clearly, when the car is yawing at high speed, for Charles Leclerc at least, he seems to have an issue on that one specific part of the track. It keeps on catching him out.
Lewis Hamilton also a little bit caught out coming through the Forest on his final lap time. That makes it 15.5 in George Russell's favour when it comes to qualifying, and Toto Wolff, we're just seeing a replay, really frustrated with that effort. But Carlos Sainz, king of the field in qualifying at least, pole position for the Spaniard ahead of Verstappen, Norris third, Charles Leclerc fourth, with the two Mercedes in fifth and sixth. But let's hear from our pole sitter with James Hinchcliffe. First of all, it's Norris.
And we're joined here by Lando Norris, who's going to line up third on the grid tomorrow. Lando, first, talk us through your run a little bit. You've had an incredible amount of pace so far through the weekend, but did you leave a little bit on the table? Did you get everything you needed out of it in Q3?
It's always tough to say, but I'm pretty happy with third, honestly. I feel like I got to the limit of the car quite quickly, which made us look good, but I struggled to get a lot more out of it in the final 2 laps. So Carlos and Max did good laps. They've been, especially Carlos, has been very quick all weekend. So I'm happy with it.
With the race pace that you guys have shown lately, and especially the fact that historically starting third here isn't a terrible thing, does that give you a lot of confidence for tomorrow?
It's tough to say. None of us have done proper long runs on the tyres that we're going to be on tomorrow. So there's question marks for all of us. But Ferrari have been very good in quali and long run pace over the last couple of races. So it's going to be tough, but we're in a good position. So looking forward to it.
Car's been good over one lap and good on a race run, starting third tomorrow. Lando Norris.
Thank you.
Lando Norris starting the Mexico City Grand Prix from third for McLaren. Indeed, the winner in Mexico has come from third on the grid in 3 of the last 4 races. His second place.
Another front row start for Max Verstappen. He's won the last 3 Grand Prix here in Mexico City. You're going to do it from the outside of the front row tomorrow. But let's talk about Q3. That first run getting deleted. How much pressure does that put on you to get that second one absolutely perfect with no mistakes?
Yeah, quite a lot. I mean, naturally, yesterday I barely didn't do any laps, so it was we're playing a lot of catch up. FP3 was not very good, so I was already, I think, under a lot of pressure to have a good qualifying, and then of course my lap time got taken away, so added a little bit more pressure. But yeah, very happy to be on the front row. I honestly didn't expect that to be possible.
Max, qualifying in Formula One right now is so tricky at any track, but when you come to a place where the downforce levels are so low, the track's surface grip is so low, you're seemingly being robbed of grip anywhere you can be. How difficult is it for drivers to just really extract the maximum in qualifying?
Yeah, I think it's probably one of the hardest tracks to get right. I mean, street circuits are difficult, and this one as well, because as you said, low downforce, it's very easy to have a lock-up or a slide, and then the tires overheat immediately, so it's one of the tricky ones on the calendar.
All right, well, from PT, we'll try to go for 4 in a row tomorrow. Congratulations.
Verstappen, they're starting second for the 3rd consecutive Grand Prix this season. But let's hear from our pole sitter, Carlos Sainz.
6th career pole position here in Mexico City for Ferrari. What a run you guys have been on. But first, let's just talk us through that lap.
Yeah, very happy, and great couple of laps. A lot of times around Mexico, you always have the feeling like you cannot put a lap together, and it's extremely difficult with how much sliding there is. But today, honestly, my 2 laps of Q3 were pretty much identical, almost perfect, and I just put 2 really solid laps in Q3, enough for pole, and very happy, because that's not normally the case around Mexico with how tricky it is.
It really seems like the last couple of weeks you've just been so comfortable in your Ferrari from the very first lap of first practice. Is that how it feels from inside the car? Because the performances have been incredible.
Yes, definitely. Since Austin, we've done seems like especially on my side, a step up also in qualifying, trying to find something extra with the outlap and the tire preparation, and it seems like we are going in the right direction. Obviously looking forward to finish the job tomorrow, but at least the pole position of today, I'll take it, because it shows progress and some really solid laps.
Now, how important is tomorrow for you guys as a team? Ferrari, the only one in the constructors battle with both cars starting inside the top 10. How important is collecting a massive haul of points tomorrow?
For sure is our number one priority. No, first of all, to bring both cars home, but especially if you win the race, those extra 7-8 points that you get when you win is important for the team in the constructors. So yeah, I'll be just looking forward to keep that P1 into turn one, and from there, hopefully our race pace should be good enough to win it.
Well, Carlos, every time you've come to Mexico, you've qualified better than the year before. Last year you were second. You kept the script going by being pole for the race tomorrow. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Good start.
6th career pole for Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari. He'll line up in that pole position for the Mexico City Grand Prix. Alongside him will be Max Verstappen. Lando Norris third, with Charles Leclerc and George Russell rounding out the top 5. We'll be analysing all of that in the Checkered Flag podcast. My thanks to Andrew, to Sam. We'll be here on 5 Live from 7:45 on Sunday for the Grand Prix. Until then, this has been an IMG production for BBC Radio 5 Live.